Hey everybody. In this episode, we're gonna look at how to load the guys, the entities from the JSON. So here's where we load the JSON and we want to put the, what are they called? These little guys into it. So currently, we are loading them here in the main file. We are just setting up there based on the entity factory that we created yesterday, or whenever you watch this is when we created it. And now what I want to do is make them part of our markup here. So if we go to levels 1-1.json, we want to introduce a little property here. I'm actually going to write it out now so that we know what we're aiming for. So we will have an entities key here, and that will be an array. And the array contains objects. And one of the object's property is the name. So this is going to be, for example, Koopa. And that name will be the one that we programmatically take here. So in this case, to create Koopa, we're going to say .koopa. And the reason we can say .koopa here is, of course, because in our loaders here in the entities file, we add this as the name Mario, or for example, Koopa. So back to our JSON file, and we type Koopa out here. And the Koopa also have a position, and that is going to be the same position as we define here in main. Here we only specify X, but in the JSON we should always specify X and Y. So I'm going to insert in the JSON here position as an array actually, and X is going to be the first index of the array, so 260 here, and then the Y will be 0. For fun and games, we're going to do the same thing to our Goomba. I'm going to copy this class here, put it here, of course, and then add the Goomba, and let's see what the Goomba's position is. Here's main, 220. So let's copy that value into here. So our aim is to read this JSON, and when we start the level, we will insert all the guys or the enemies in the level based on the JSON, instead of programmatically as we do in here. So this code will be replaced by this markup. So what I want to start with here now is just to make sure that we didn't destroy a JSON in the process of rewriting it. So I'm just going to refresh the game here, and we're not looking at the JSON right now. We also make sure that we didn't break it. Now, where are we going to load this? We're going to load that in Level.js. And this part of the loader here has become a little bit big for my taste. So we're going to break out the collision setup. We're going to break out the level background setup. And we're also going to break out the sprite and entity setup here. So it's pretty straightforward. So I'm going to start by copying this here, and I'm going to place it into a new function. And this function is going to be private to this level module. So just write here, function, setup collision. And what do we take? We take the level spec and we take the level. And we paste it in here, clean it up a little bit. And we can now just call setup collision using level spec and level. Let's try that out before we continue. So that worked. Now we want to continue with the background setup here. So we're gonna apply the similar process for that. Take this here, new function, and we name it suitably to setup backgrounds. We take the level spec, and we take, big S, and we take the level, and also we need a background sprites for this. So there we go, paste it in, clean it up, and everything looks fine, I think. So copy the function name down here and run it. And this function takes level spec, takes the level and background sprites. Before we continue, we test our work. Zip, and that works fine. So lastly, we just want to do one more thing for this, because this is where we're gonna because in this function that we decouple now is where our magic is gonna happen. I'm gonna copy this out. I'm inventing a new function here. The function is gonna be setup entities. And we need the level spec and the level here. So paste that in there, clean it up, and make sure we run it. We try it out. Zip, zip. And there we have a little example of some wholesome refactoring and cleanup. I'm just going to zoom in this file because I realize I don't have the right zoom level exactly. Might be a little bit small. There we go. Woo! Before we continue further, I would like to look at another thing that I learned. And it is that we have this here, the expand span. No, sorry. This is what we need to look at. This expand ranges just takes ranges here and expands them and yields the item. So I learned from a very observant viewer, of course, that we can actually simplify this to something that is quite a lot nicer. We can just write yield star for expand range. And this will mean that we expand the result of this and re-yield it. So this is basically yield by proxy or whatever. Not that I know exactly what proxy means, but it flows nicely. So let's do that change and refresh the page. And it turns out it works well. This leads us to another really cool refactor. And that is that this expand tiles function can also be rewritten to a generator function. First of all, we need to designate this function as a generator function. And we do that by just placing an asterisk here. So the asterisk lets the code know that this function returns a generator and not a value. We also have to do that for a recursive function of walk tiles. So I'm going to put an asterisk here too. And now we can remove this intermediate array here where we save all the tiles. So I'm going to do that, remove that. And that means we now can't save these tiles in this array. So instead we're simply going to yield this tile that we create here. And now we only have two more things to do. And it is to yield star the walk tile function. So down here where we use return the result, we're going to instead say yield star walk tiles. Now we can remove this. And in the recursive function here, we also need to say yield star. If I got everything right here, this should have the exact same effect, except that we don't store all the tiles in an intermediate array. And wow. So thank you very much for that tips. I did not know that yield star was a thing. Now we want to close this down. No, I'm just kidding. We need to scroll up and we want to look deeper into setup entities, because this here is where we're going to read the JSON we altered. So let's add some diagnosis here first so that we can know what we're working from. We want to make sure that we can read the entities property. So I'm going to say console.log here, and we're going to say level spec.prop entities. Let's see what this looks like. And entities are these. So these are the values we're gonna use in order to set up the entities in the level. And if we go back to main here, we can see that we need this entity factory in order to create these entities. So I'm gonna prepare this function here in the level loader to create, to receive an entity factory. So we need an entity factory here, and let's log that out too. Since we aren't given this function an entity factory yet, we are just gonna get undefined out here. So the object now is to get the level factory, the entity factory to show up here. In order to not confuse ourselves too much, let's remove the logged messages here for Goomba and main.js. So we have main.js here, we log out the entity factory here. And actually, let's make sure we rename this entity factory here too. So this doesn't change how the program behaves. This just lets us know that this is the same kind that we are expecting here and in our level JSON here. Level factory. So we want an entity factory out here, and we don't get it currently because it is undefined. And now continue to remove this sprite sheet logging here from Goomba. So we go to goomba.js and we remove this thing here. Not needed. Okay, there we go. So we have the level JSON here that we're going to parse, and we have the undefined that should be the entity factory. So what I'm going to do here is something that we've done a lot, and it is to wrap this load level in a factory for load level. So I'm going to export here another function that we call create level loader, and the level loader takes an entity factory. And this create level loader will return the load level function. What the hell am I thinking about now? Yes, this will return the load level function here. So we're gonna say return function load level, and let's indent all this down here. So now we have built a loader here that we can return with the entity factory bound to it. So we run this create level loader once we have the entity factory, and then we return this load level function when we have it, so that we can call it, so that we can pass it down here. So we pass it in to set up entities up here from the call here. Now to make this work intermediately, we're gonna go up here, and instead of calling load level, we're gonna call, what is it called? Create level loader. And since this returns a function now, we need to call the result we want. So we still haven't sent in the entity factory in it, but this should still make it work with the new names and the new way of handling the function. And it does, but it's still undefined here. So now we need to change up this function so that we can put that into here. So in this case, we cannot parallelize this because this create level loader now depends on load entities. So we need to put this in its own chain context here, and we need to chain it from it here and say entity factory. Then from the entity factory, now we can actually return this. So here we just pass on an entity factory, and we also send it in here to the level loader. There we go, entity factory inside here. And now down here, we're gonna get out a level loader. So we call this here load level. But since load level is asynchronous too, we need to have yet another little intermediate call. So let's say promise.all here, and we pass on the entity factory once more, and we run load level with, what is it, 1-1 here. And then we get the entity factory and the level. There we go. So I think this is it, except that I typed erroneously here somewhere. Here I did that. And this doesn't need to call this here, because what we do here is create the function and call it immediately. Now we want to wait for this call until down here. So now we instead get this load level out down here. So let's remove this and let's see if this works. I think that this looks pretty shoddy, so I don't think it will work. Actually, I'm pretty sure this needs to have another parenthesis and this too. And let's have a go. So now we have then, yeah, there it is. Here we have the entity factory now. So now we could create these according to the JSON. But seriously, this is a little bit of a mess. So we could refactor this using promises so that it looked nicer, but I think this is an ideal place to use async await. And async await, I'm going to type it out here, async await is a piece of syntactic sugar that basically removes the need of saying .then and supplying a callback. So let me see here if I can get this right. So imagine we had load entities here. And then we need to say then and get out the entity factory and continue our work. We could instead say const entity factory equals await load entities. So this await keyword replaces basically .then and the function closure that you create by converting it to an assignment, what is it called? Expression. I think it's called expression. By converting it to an assignment expression. Let me see if I can refactor this mess using async await. Alright, my fingers are warmed up. Since setting up our game is a completely asynchronous operation, we need to create a function with the keyword async prefixed. So I write async function. I'm just going to call this main. And the main function is going to take the canvas. And let's bake the context in here. Then we remove this rubbish here. And then we can take this load entities await entity factory part and just use up here. Because that's the first thing we want to do. So when we call main, we're first going to create the entity factory. And that is exactly what I do here. So now we can kind of remove this. Then we can see that we create a level loader. So we take this call here and we move it into our main. And we want to save the level loader in a load level variable. So I'm saying const load level equals create level loader. And since create level loader is asynchronous, we prefix it with await. So what will happen here now is that entity factory will be assigned to what load entities returns as a promise or resolves to as a promise. And that is what the await keyword handles. It also means that this line of code won't execute until this is done. That means we can now shave off this and we have the load level call left. So we say const level equals load level 11 and we have to wait it because it is asynchronous. So now remove this load level call. So now let's remove this load level call and we can remove this then. And I think the rest of this is good to go. We probably just need to clean up the bottom here a little bit because since we're not wrapping this in a function call, we can remove that. Then lastly, I want to move this down to put that there. And then we call main with canvas. Main is asynchronous too, but since I don't await for the value to come back, I don't need to say await here. What I do here is kind of what is called fire and forget. I just fire this function, I don't care what happens in it. So, let's see if I got this right. So now let's remove this here, Goomba and Koopa, because we're gonna take this from the JSON. That's the whole reason we started this episode. So this means that now Goomba and Tupa and Koopa is gone. And we need to move that code logic into the level.json to set up entities. And as you can see here now, we get out the objects. I think this might be the 5th time we looked at them, but I want to really assure you what's going on here. And then we also have our Mario, or our entity factory here. So, because this is an array, the whole entities property, we want to loop over it. So, in here, I'm gonna say level spec.entities.forEach, and we get out the entity spec here. Let's log that out for clarity. Entity spec. We remove this part, and we have a look. So here we can say when we loop over this entities array, we get all the things we need to create. So here's a Koopa, here's a Goomba, and we also get the position in an array. So let's see if we can load these values here. We can say const name equals entity spec.name. And we also have x and y. So const position equals entities.position. And then finally we can break out x and y from position. So if we now log, instead of entity spec, we log the name and the x and the y, we should see the name and 2 numbers. No, entities are not defined, let's say. Was it, oh here, entity spec. And that is what we got. Now we're gonna simplify this a little bit. Since we got that out here like this, we can do, I don't remember what it's called. Let me look it up. Dum 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 dum. Is it spread syntax? I think it's not spread, it's the opposite. Let's see. ES6 new features. There's some very good blog where I read this on. Where is that guy? That is such a genius. Oh, these names. Destructuring assignments. Object matching shorthand notation. This is what we want. Let's see, deep matching. Here we go. Here we go. This is what we want to use. And we're gonna mix object and array matching. And it looks like this here. This is gonna be awesome. Let's go in here. And we can do this. Name. And we can do this. Position. And then X and Y here. Now we can remove this part. And we should have the same result. Let's try it out. Ow! So, we have done this a little similarly before in the code here, but this is probably the deepest one. It really, I think a lot of people is annoyed by this syntax because if you're not used to it, this just looks like what the is going on. But once you get used to it, the code becomes very concise and it's a little bit easier to ball around. Especially here when you want the JSON to be concise and not have to specify X every time because you know X and Y is always in succession. But now we have all the details. We have the name of the thing we need to create and where the position it's going to go to. Let's get the create entity function from the entity factory by saying const create entity equals entity factory and the name. So if we log this out, we will get a function here. So we get the create Koopa and the create Goomba respectively. Thus we can down here say const entity equals create entity, and that will be the entity of this name. Then we need to set the entity at the expected position. So we say entity.position.set X and Y. And finally remove the console.log and insert it into the level. So level.entities.add entity. There we go. Clean it up a little bit and now we should have a Goomba and a Koopa. Wow. So we got these now from the level JSON. And in the end, we're kind of trying to make a reusable engine. And we can't have the resources hard-coded if we want to do that. So I'm actually gonna cap this for now because I don't like when the episode's getting too long. It's so confusing to make them. And sometimes I spend like 10 hours recording because I don't get it right. So it's better to split it up in small, quantifiable presets.